Hello, future bureaucrats of India, and welcome to Learn Stroke Editorial Summary, which we called as BMT, Burning, Moving, and Trending. So, this is a feature where we'll discuss the most important editorials which appear in the newspaper. And as you know, editorials are something which all the UPSC aspirants have a difficult time decoding. The real meanings of the editorials is difficult. So, big challenge for all the UPSC aspirants. For all of them, editorial is very important. And I can easily tell you what are some of the most important reasons why you should definitely study editorials is quickly very important for the prelims, mains, and interview. Sometimes you may not get questions directly, but definitely knowing the summary of the editorial or knowing the points of the editorial will definitely make you a better civil service aspirant. It gives you a perspective building, it gives you a lot of ideas which you can use it for GS papers as a food for thought. You can use it for essay papers, and sometimes even questions come for the prelims also. And all this perspective, ideas, everything that we talk about will definitely give you a better idea for the civil services interview also. So that is why editorials are very, very important. And we'll analyze three important editorials and in a quick manner and give you the most important points. And let's see. We are doing it in a very different way. I'll tell you how we do it. This is the first editorial that we're going to discuss, which is called as the Indian model of coexistence. So there is a way how we do this. We actually do it through an IAS filter. What do you mean by an IAS filter? That means we read the whole editorial and we put a filter. Just like as you see this, there is something which is actually separated. We have a small refiner which is refining, and only the most important points from the editorial needs to be known. You don't have to read each and every point of the editorial. So quickly analyze Israel and Palestine, the Indian model of coexistence. This is an important editorial from the civil service perspective because you can see down, it is very, very important for international relations. General Studies Paper 2, India and its neighborhood, Israel-Palestine issue plus international relations. This is very, very there in the syllabus. So let's quickly apply the IAS filter. And first of all, when you apply the IAS filter, you see that the most important point that we discuss is what is called as an IAS filter. Let's take the most important points. Basically, this article editorial, it talks mainly about the cycle of violences that takes place between Israel and Palestine. So the whole of the article talks about different scenarios, timelines about the violence and the fight between Israel and Palestine, and how the three religions, the Abrahamic religions like Judaism, Christianity, and Islam is taking place in this region. And secondly, this article talks about how Israel becomes a dominant force in the region. Since 1948, it talks about how after 1948, Israel becomes a dominant force. That is the whole premise of the editorial. And let's check out the next important IAS filter points. Yeah, here we go. It talks about after in 1988 how Israel is becoming a dominant force. It talks about the wars like Arab wars, and it talks about the 6-day war, and all this wars shows that Israel has become a dominant force which was becoming a leader and which suppressed Palestine for a long time. So this article talks about the violence and how Israel becomes a dominant force. So this is the most important thread of the IAS filter. When you applied the filter, these are the most points which came to the fore. And after IAS filter, let's discuss something called as ideas. There is another segment called as ideas, and let's see what are the important idea. The whole editorial talks about an important point called as Indian model of democracy and Indian model of coexistence. This talks about Indian model of coexistence. Very, very important. This can be used in your GS papers everywhere. What is this Indian model of coexistence? That means Indian model of democracy and secularism, which India accommodates religion, ethnic, linguistic, and other diversities. And India is a very big, diverse country. It accommodates everything, right from the ancient India to the modern India. You can see that India has accommodated all type of religions, all type of races, all type of creeds, etc. So Indian model of coexistence is something that Israel and Palestine should adopt to solve their problem. And they talk about the two-state solution. Two-state solution is between the Israel and Palestine. You should know more about it. Whether it is a two-state solution or not, the solution for Israel Palestine, according to this article, says that the Indian model of coexistence is very, very important and suitable for them. So that is the most important premise of this whole article. And we have a small thing called as shootout, which means questions for the mains. Israel might not offer the right model of conflict resolution for India, but India presents a model for peaceful coexistence for Israel. Discuss. Very important question, read it. And I'm also suggesting an essay question. A nation is an imagined community. As imagination expands, the foundation of nation becomes deeper. This can even be an essay question. So two questions from the shoot it from this editorial. And I think we have also something called as areas to learn. What are the few areas that you can learn? Definitely learn more about Israel-Palestine issue. What do you mean by Hamas? You should know and what do you mean by two-state solution? So these are some of the relevant areas to learn from the editorials. Moving on to the next editorial is COVID diplomacy. Suhasini had this article, COVID diplomacy 2.0. What are the changes that Indian government should learn from the COVID diplomacy and the present trends? So this is a big editorial which talks about a lot of important relevant points, and let's see how this point is important for civil services. It's important for general studies paper 2 for the mains. India and its neighborhood plus international relations plus bilateral, regional and global groupings and agreements involving India or affecting India's interests. This is something from the syllabus. This is something from the UPSC main syllabus. You should definitely find it out. And let's quickly check out, apply the UPSC filter into the COVID diplomacy article. Let's apply the filter and let's see what are the most important points which talks about the COVID diplomacy. First is the whole article talks about a focus, because in 2020 because the COVID was very different, India's response in 2020 was very different, and the article says in 2021 India's response is very, very different what it used to be in 2020. So previously in 2020 it used to get medicines, flights, repatriate Indians abroad, getting back the Indians, and that is Vande Bharat mission. And after the lockdown it's called Vaccine Maitri. And lot of things have changed in 2021. Lot of things have changed. And what is it? In the 2.0 version, the COVID diplomacy 2.0 version, there are a lot of things like you need oxygen supplies, deficit of oxygen, medicine shortages. So that means as far as a country, India is concerned, there is a huge change in the COVID diplomacy. And this article basically talks about the change that India is seeing in 2021. So that is the most important IAS filter point that I will tell you once you filter. These are some of the important points. And as you can just see, bringing in the remdesivir and the favipiravir, the medicines getting in, and United States from Russia was actually part of the first mission. Now India, apart from the medicines, is also seeking medicine for black fungus. They talk about it. And India's commitment to handling domestic, international as well as neighbor pressure, very important. India needs a lot of vaccine. India needs a lot of vaccine to vaccinate the whole population of India. So there is a domestic pressure. Internationally, India is dependent to get vaccines from different countries. Especially in this article, they talk about USA and how India is dependent on US in many fronts. And also neighbor pressure, very, very important. Countries like Bhutan and many other countries in Africa, the whole countries, small countries are totally dependent on India for vaccination. That is the most important point that we're trying to bring in. That means international, domestic, many countries in the world are dependent on India regarding vaccines. So quick points to make here. And yes, take a close look at it. The ideas, let's see the ideas apart from the filters. Shortage of vaccines in India, which is something known. India looks to US, looks up to US and the AstraZeneca doses. So you need a lot of doses, and this article talks about a lot of regulations regarding the US and how India has to get the vaccine from the US. Lot of regulations. India has to make a lot of changes. So basically, they talk about how India should look up to US and get the vaccines from the US. And it also talks about patent waivers. That means WTO is also in the news. You know, what do you mean by patent waivers? India should get the know-hows. The small countries and countries like India should get the know-how of vaccine making. That means you need a patent waiver approved by WTO. So they also have the article also talks about all those concepts. And the other important set of ideas is what we discussed. India's export more than 66 million vaccine doses between January and April. This is the export point. And India's neighbors and partners are dependent on India. That means the example of Bhutan, how Bhutan is totally dependent on India. Many African countries are also dependent on India. So that is the reason which makes India popular. India needs vaccine, and that is what is called as COVID diplomacy. And these are some of the most important ideas which it talks about this. And again, a shootout question here. Vaccine diplomacy for India needs collaboration on all fronts, both domestic as well as international and multi-stakeholders. Analyze the statements. That means you should know vaccine diplomacy of India needs collaboration on all fronts. And you know what are the challenges for domestic, international, and multi-stakeholders. So these are an important areas, and this is a question also. Try answering this question too. And let's take the areas to learn. Definitely there are areas to learn from this article. You should know what you mean by Quad Summit. Quad was mentioned here. AstraZeneca and Sputnik 5 mentioned here. And very relevant, 1972 Biological Weapons Convention. Very important for prelims also. What do you mean by Biological Weapons Convention? Previously, it was known as the Convention on the Prohibition of the Development, Production and Stockpiling of Bacteriological and Toxin Weapons. Very, very big name. So I suggest that you read it. It's simply called as the Biological Weapons Convention. The article mentions about this. And you should also know India's bid for permanent UN Security Council membership. The article also mentions about that. So you should know how India's preparedness is all about. So this whole article of COVID diplomacy editorial talks about all these major points. And the next editorial that we're discussing is actually an editorial from Hindustan Times. The previously two discussed editorials were taken from the Hindu, and this is from Hindustan Times. And the reason why this becomes important is they talk about a concept called as sister islands. And just like we say sister cities, you have sister islands developmental framework. That is a word which is in the current affairs. So that is the reason why I picked up this news item. And why this is important, very important for the prelims as well as for the mains. Two papers, General Studies paper 2 as well as General Studies paper 3. International relations, international institutions, agencies and fora, their structure, mandate, and plus India and neighborhood, that makes it for GS paper 2 and GS paper 3. You should check out that environmental related, conservation, environmental pollution, degradation, environmental impact assessment. These are the important mains area why this editorial becomes important. And let's apply the UPSC or the IAS filter. Let's apply the filter. And we'll check out what happens when we apply the filter. You get that these are the important points which comes to the main point here. And this talks about Andaman and Nicobar Island. This whole editorial is talking about the Andaman and Nicobar Island. That is the point number 1. And it sees that the Andaman and Nicobar Islands is getting a lot of help. A lot of countries are interested to collaborate and invest. That is the point. They are ready to invest in Andaman and Nicobar Islands because of what? Because of the strategic position in the Indian Ocean, and definitely the ecological, environmental, and you should say that there is something called as a geopolitical importance, very, very relevant point, geopolitical importance. So Andaman Nicobar's geography is also important. So this time, Japan is ready to make 265 crores towards developmental projects in Andaman Nicobar Islands. And when Japan invests, you should see that there is something called as an ODA, or the Overseas Development Assistance Initiative. So whenever you see an ODA, Japan is making a lot of ODA initiatives to India, and especially Andaman Nicobar Islands. And not only Japan, you should also see, apart from Japan, this whole article talks about France. This whole editorial talks about the Indo-French collaboration, because France as a country is also very much interested with Andaman Nicobar Islands, and there is a reason why France has an interest. We'll discuss that. So what is that? There is a key word which I want you to remember: Sustainable Island Development Framework. This is something the international countries want to create, which is called as Sustainable Island Development Framework, something which the countries want. And countries previously talked about sister cities. That is a word. They talk about sister cities, and just like we have sister cities across the world, you need something called as a sister island. So Andaman Nicobar Island can be an island as a part of sister city. And let's see how it can be a sister city, and let's quickly find out how it can be a sister city. Let's check out the ideas. Now the filter is gone. Let's check out the ideas, and we see that. And what are the benefits of Andaman Nicobar Islands and why countries are investing? So I should say why countries are interested in this. Basically because of the economic, ecological, and the indigenous tribes of the islands. It has a great importance. And I said France is interested. Why France is interested? Because of the La Réunion Islands on the southwest of Indian Ocean. Very important. The Reunion Islands is the name which I want to write, because you should know that in Indian Ocean, different countries have got bases. Even Australia, America, United States of America, and even France has got a small territory or small island places in the Indian Ocean as a part of their geopolitical relations. And just like France is investing in the Reunion Islands, France would also like to invest in the Andaman Nicobar Islands, just like it was investing in the Reunion Islands. So that is why Reunion Island becomes important in this. And now let's check out the other important aspects here. Australia and US too have their island territories in the Indian Ocean. I told you Australia has the Cocos Keeling and Diego Garcia for the United States. Very important. It can also be asked for the prelims. Match the following. The Cocos Keeling is for Australia. Diego Garcia is for United States of America. So Reunion Island is a case study to develop strategic islands in a sustainable manner. And so India should learn from Reunion Island of France. And what are some of the primary issues which island nations in Indian Ocean faces? So these are some of the problems which Indian Ocean countries face together. Sustainable development problems, illegal fishing, disaster management, climate crisis, renewable energy, and other aspects of blue economy. So these are some of the most collective problems which the island countries together face. So these are some of the things that you should definitely remember. And apart from ideas, apart from the ideas and Australia, let's have a new thing called as concepts. There is a new item called concepts, because the whole editorial talks about something called as IOC, or Indian Ocean Commission. It is the only island-driven organization in the Indian Ocean, bringing together African islands of Comoros, Madagascar, Seychelles, Mauritius, also known as the Vanilla Islands. France too is a member of this group through Reunion. France has Reunion. So this brings us the concept of IOC, the only island-driven organization which brings the Vanilla Islands. You know what is the Vanilla Islands? France has a membership because it has Reunion Islands, and they are united by language. French-speaking nations. That is the key word. United by language. It plays a very important role in the challenges of island nations in the region. India is an observer. That is an important concept. So please remember the concept of an IOC. India is actually an observer in this big concept. And now the important areas I've discussed. Now let's discuss some of the important questions. Shoot it. For mains, despite the significant military and strategic possibilities, the Andaman and Nicobar Islands are key in transforming the global political dynamics of the Indian Ocean region. Comment. Very important question. You can answer this question. The second question, a sustainable island development framework and the creation of sister island is not only important for the Andamans but will also be applicable and the other island nations across the Indian Ocean. So this question talks about how sustainable island development framework and sister island will actually be a big concept in Indian Ocean. So this talks about this, and let us take the next important set of questions. You have two more questions here. I've added two more questions. In continuing its Indo-Pacific collaborations, how can India and France leverage the opportunity to create an island development framework for the region? Discuss with examples. So this is regarding an Indo-French angle. How can Indo and France collaboration create a better framework in the region? Discuss with examples. So you have to cite all the examples what I talked. And the last question, Indian Ocean Commission plays an important role in voicing the concerns and challenges of the islands and Western Indian Ocean. How can India lead an island-focused development model in the Indian Ocean? So Indian Ocean Commission plays an important part. You have to write about IOC. And the second part, it talks about how India can lead an island-focused development in the Indian Ocean region. So these are some of the important questions that we just marked here. And let's see the areas to learn from this area. You have to find out what are the areas to learn. France Reunion Island, please know the geography of the Reunion Islands. And Indian Ocean Commission, IOC, Andaman Nicobar Islands Group, learn about the aspects of Lakshadweep is in the news, so learn about Andaman Nicobar Islands. Indian Ocean countries and the challenges that it poses. Know the geography. What do you mean by blue economy and ODA initiative? So these are some of the important areas to learn. So find out the important areas. So these are the important things which we discussed from the editorials. So this was an editorial summary which we tried to decode three important editorials from the newspapers, and we have added an IAS filter, and we have made the editorial short and crisp and easy to understand also. So keep watching LearnStroke's editorial summary, burning, moving and trending. So subscribe the channel and share it with your friends who are preparing for civil services. Definitely this can be a good decoder for editorials. So thank you so much. This is Arjun Shaankar for LearnStroke.